Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing about the letters of alphabet in relation to the Bible characters. I hope you viewed the last video where we discussed about the first 10 letters of alphabet. We began with A for Adam, B for Benjamin, C for Christ, D for Deborah, E for Esther, F for Felix, G for Goliath, H for Hosea, I for Isaiah, J for Jephthah. Today, we're going to be discussing about the next letters, which is letter K, letter L, letter M, letter N, and letter O. I hope you're ready to learn with me. To begin with, we're going to start with K. When you talk about K, K stands for King Saul. Do you know King Saul in the Bible? Let me lead you through King Saul. Saul was the first king in Israel, and he came from a very humble background. He was from the tribe of Benjamin, and we know that the tribe of Benjamin is one of the smallest tribes in Israel. Saul was searching for his father's lost donkeys when he met Samuel, and God revealed to Samuel that Saul would be the first king of Israel. Do you know who King is? King was the leader of Israel at this point, but you think the first king of Israel was Saul. Saul was anointed as a king, and though he was shy, he was physically impressive. He was very tall, taller than anyone else in Israel. What does this story tell us? It tells us that God can use anyone for his purpose, no matter how small you are or no matter how unimportant you feel. God can use anyone for his purpose. Saul was a very brave and capable leader. One time, Nahash, who was the king of the Ammonites, threatened to harm the Israelites. Saul, empowered by the Spirit of God, led the Israelites to a great victory, and he saved the people of Jabesh Gilead. This teaches us that God gives us the strength and the courage when we trust in Him. He's going to protect us, He's going to lead us. All we need to do is to trust God. King Saul continued following the commands of the Lord up to a point whereby he struggled and he disobeyed God. How did he do this? Saul was supposed to wait for Samuel to offer a sacrifice before going into the battle. But what did he do? He grew impatient and he did it himself. This disobedience showed his lack of trust in God's timing, and Samuel told him that his kingdom would not last. Remember, he was the king of the Israelites. He was the king in Israel at this point. What does that tell us? We are supposed to be patient. We are supposed to be obedient to God. Why? Because that is very important. The timing of God is very important. If we trust Him, if we trust His timing, everything is going to work well with us. There was an instance whereby God commanded Saul. He told Saul, go and destroy the Amalekites completely. But do you know what Saul did? Saul went to where the Amalekites were, but he did not kill all of them. He spared some for himself because he was the king. He spared some fat animals for himself. That was a disobedience, right? Yeah, King Saul disobeyed God. When Samuel confronted him, Saul made excuses. Instead of admitting that he had made a mistake of not killing all the Amalekites, Saul started making excuses. Then Samuel told him to obey is better than sacrifice. And Samuel announced that God had rejected him as the king. Remember, he was the first king of Israel, but because of disobedience, he was rejected by God. What does this teach us? It tells us that we must obey God completely, not just partially. When God says you're supposed to pray, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to obey it completely without making excuses. Because when we make excuses, it does not please God. There was another point whereby this king of Israel, this first king of Israel, who is Saul, he started disobeying God. He started being jealous of a young boy. His name was David. Do you remember the story of David? Whereby we talked about it in the G for Goliath. If you don't remember, we said Goliath was a giant from Philistine. And there was this young boy, his name was David. He killed Goliath using a sling and a stone. So after David defeated Goliath, he became so popular. Saul was so jealous of him. He was so jealous of his success. And he tried to kill David so many times. But David respected Saul, and he always knew that Saul was God's anointed king. So he refused to harm him at all. What does that show us? It shows us that David was a righteous person. He was a good person. What do we learn from this jealousy that Saul had on David? We learn that jealousy can lead to bad decisions. So we should always be happy for others, and we should trust God and His plans for our lives. Because of Saul's disobedience and jealousy, he felt so abandoned by God. So he faced a battle with the Philistines, and he sought help from a witch, which was against God's laws. The witch summoned the spirit of Samuel, who predicted Saul's defeat and death. What lesson do we learn from Saul turning to a witch doctor? We learn that we should always seek God's guidance, because if we turn to wrong sources of information, or if we turn to the witches, it can lead to bad consequences. How did Saul die? Saul died during a battle with the Philistines. He was critically wounded, and he chose to fall on his own sword to avoid capture. His death marked the end of his reign and paved way for the next king of Israel, who was King David. What do we learn about this? We know that pride and disobedience can lead to a downfall. But when we follow the plans of God, we will always prevail. K for King Saul. The next letter is L. L for Levi. Do you know Levi? Levi was one of the sons of Jacob and Leah, and he formed one of the 12 tribes of Israel. How many tribes of Israel do we know? There are 12, and he's saying one of them is the tribe of Levi. There are some key figures or some of the characters in the Bible who are from the tribe of Levi. Examples are Aaron, who was the brother of Moses. Do we know about Moses? Moses was the servant of God who delivered the Israelites from Egypt. We also have other characters like Samuel and Ezra. They were also from the tribe of Levi. L for Levi. The next letter is M. M for Micah. When we talk about Micah, he was a minor prophet, and he was from Moresheth, which was a small town in Judah. M for Micah. The next letter is N. N for Noah. When you talk about Noah, he was a descendant of Adam through Seth. So Seth was the son of Adam. And Noah was the son of a man called Lamech. He was a righteous man, and he obeyed God. And he lived during a time when people were very wicked. They were not doing what God wanted them to do. God was very angry with them, and he punished them using the floods. God instructed Noah to build an ark so that he could save his family and 2 of every kind of the animal, that is the male and the female. So when the ark was completed, Noah and his family went to the boat together with the 2 of every kind of the animals, and the floods came. These floods came, and it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. That was a very long time. And the water covered the lands for about 150 days. Later on, God was sorry for what he had done, and he made a covenant with Noah that he was never going to destroy the world again using the floods. And the sign of the covenant was the rainbow. Do we know the rainbow? How many colors does a rainbow have? A rainbow normally have the 7 colors. So that is the story of Noah. Noah had 3 sons. Do you know them? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So we're saying letter N for Noah. The next letter is letter O. When we talk about O, we're going to say O for Obed. Do you know Obed? Obed was the son of a man called Boaz and a woman whose name was Ruth. He was the grandfather of King David who killed Goliath, and his grandmother was Naomi. What do we learn from the story of Obed? We learn that God works through ordinary people and that God redeems broken lives. O for Obed.